And so when you go through this portal, through this greenhouse, you're suddenly into the space. And at some point, some of the characters try and interact with other characters. And that bit went a bit Doctor Who for me.
Welcome back, everybody. My name is Phil Marriott. I am with Raj Rudolph and Sean Vickers. Today, a film that neither myself or Raj have seen, but Sean has. So it's over to Sean for a review of The Greenhouse at the BFI Flare 2021 Film Festival.
So this is an Aussie film. It's called The Greenhouse. It is a film about loss. It's through the eyes of Beth, and she is from kind of a large family. She's got 3 siblings. She's got 2 mothers. She's got lesbian mothers. And it tells the story really of what happens when one of her mothers dies, Lillian dies. And Beth finds a portal in her back garden through a greenhouse where she can go and relive old memories of her growing up and of her parents. And that is the crux of the story. So there's a sprinkling of fantasy in this film. But it tries to deal with some quite big topics around grief.
Now, I didn't see this. I said it at the start, myself and Raj haven't seen it, but it didn't leap out at me when I read the synopsis. Do you normally feel that if a synopsis doesn't grab you, you still watch it anyway? I mean, it wasn't like you were disappointed. Did you feel disappointed by this?
It left me a little cold, this film, because I don't think it truly landed either of the things he was trying to do. So if he wants to go down the kind of like fantasy dreamscape route, you go for it, you know. Or if you want to go down something where you're trying to portray grief, you go down a different route. And I think it tries to do too much. I think it tries to be quite clever. There's also quite a large cast. So you've got the 3 siblings plus Beth plus the parents. And so at times it kind of skirts over you. So they are big topics that we're talking about. And in some ways the greenhouse, in my mind, acts as this device for like, whenever she went into the greenhouse, she'd see a moment in her history where the family would be talking about something that's happened, an emotion. It was always an emotion that was happening. And I felt like the greenhouse was a device for this. It left me a bit cold. At times, it felt a bit like an episode of Hollyoaks, and that's really brutal. But it didn't land so much, the characters. There was a really amazing moment where Lillian's wife gives like a eulogy at a table sat outside with the children, which almost brought me to tears. And I was like, for me, that was the anchor point of it, because that's when I really felt like it was an actor going in to feel the depth of their emotions. And I thought that was amazing. And that's right in the middle of the film. And I thought that for me is the representation of grief. And all of this is kind of skirting over it, and trying to play with ideas of it. But that's where I struggled a little, because it just didn't land for me.
So do you think the filmmakers in that respect didn't understand the subject matter? Because Hollyoaks is not the sort of thing you really want to be reminded of when you're talking about grief or watching a film about grief. It's obviously quite a heavy subject, isn't it? There's a lot of complexities.
It is, and I think it is a learned experience. And so there are moments where she kind of gets stuck in the greenhouse and she kind of gets trapped. And there's some quite clunky metaphors about her getting trapped in grief. And yeah, that happens. I mean, I've got a personal learned experience of parental grief, so I can kind of understand it. And in some ways, that's why it was kind of skirted over me, because there was too many kind of like rousing soundtracks that were tried like as a device to make you feel something, and actually it needed to be starker and colder in a way. So yeah, I don't know. It just didn't land for me in a way. I like the premise. I didn't mind this idea of this kind of fantasy of this greenhouse as a device to try and explore emotions, but I don't think it really landed for me.
Yeah, I'm just curious about the sci-fi portal element of it. You mentioned earlier that you have to either go for it or don't, and then I was kind of expecting that a little bit from the synopsis, but I didn't quite get that in the trailer. Does it kind of have a sci-fi element, or is it just more metaphorical?
It's kind of it's not sci-fi in a way, but it is fantastical. And so when you go through this portal, through this greenhouse, you're suddenly into the space, and at some point, some of the characters try and interact with other characters, and that bit went a bit Doctor Who for me. And so I was a bit like, oh, I don't know what this is either. This also feels like a different tonality or mood that you're trying to portray, and you're making the viewer work really hard to understand why. And actually, I think it's one of those things where if they'd simple, I like the idea, but the execution could have been so much better. And lots of kind of left open threads about the kids and what they were going to do and why they left up. There was so much going on that distracted from what was just true grief and how families deal with it. And yeah, the greenhouse could have been a great device to explore that. And I think the execution was off slightly.
What about the cast as well? Did you recognise anyone? Are these newcomers or are these
No,
actors?
I'm sure they're well known in Australia. I didn't recognize any of the cast. I think it was okay acted. Again, it didn't grab me, with the exception, and I made a note of it of her mother doing this kind of eulogy because it was really touching. It felt really genuine. It felt really honest. It felt like someone who was struggling with grief, and the rest of it just felt like a device that just tried to play around the edges with it.
Okay, so star rating, I'm guessing not a
Two.
5.
Two. You know my favorite number for these ratings. Two. I think it has oodles of potential, this film, and I can imagine it being pitched and people going, "That's a great idea," and I love how this the grounds of the device. I'm not sure about the execution for me personally.
Okay, so more BFI Flare coverage soon, so make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Don't forget to like this video, and we'll be back for another review soon. I think we got our work cut out for us, haven't we?
We have got our work cut out for us.